It's recording? Oh,
Yep.
Yeah, it is. Okay.
I'll try to behave now.
Also, I think I'm reading my speech off of my computer, so it'll still, like, it shows me, right, that I'm on, like, the document right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have any questions before we get going, Faith?
No, not really. I've been watching, so I know we just, like, they ask questions in the chat after and stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I've been in a few where audience members have like raised their hand, and then you kind of like call on them, and then they get to turn their camera on if they want to and ask their questions verbally. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, either way.
Okay. It's been a little smoother in my experience to have. It just feels a little bit more like an actual,
Yeah, because they're explaining their questions.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
That's how we're gonna do it.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Okay, if you have no other questions, I am going to let the hordes in.
Oh. Who's doing the introduction? Who's doing that? It's not something I'm doing, but which of you two are doing it? Like, hello, welcome.
I think Mr. Loving has volunteered himself
Sweet.
graciously. You were very kind.
Great.
Don't fight. It's okay.
I'll do my best Miss Attridge impersonation. That's probably not a good idea.
You can try it.
No.
We'll have it recorded.
Okay. I'm going to let the hordes in if there are no objections.
Okie dokie.
All right.
I'm ready.
Admit all the terror.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the thesis defense of Faith Yakana. We're still waiting on a few people to come on in, get their audio connected and whatnot. So I'm going to be going over how this is going to proceed. Most of you probably know. But we're going to start with Faith giving a speech telling us a little bit about her thesis. Then for about 30 to 40 minutes, Faith and her panel, who will introduce themselves momentarily, will be discussing and asking questions about her paper. And then the last 10 to 15 minutes will be reserved for your questions. Just to go over a few audience member expectations, please keep your camera off and remain muted. At the end, if you do have a question to ask, we're going to do it so that you can raise your hand and Mr. Gordon will unmute you and you can ask Faith your question directly rather than having to type it into the chat. All right. Before we get going, how about our panelists introduce themselves? I'm Mr. Loving. I wasn't really part of Faith's thesis writing project, but I read it and I enjoyed it a lot.
I'm Mr. Gordon. I was Faith's precept leader for Notes from Undergrad. There we go. Sorry.
I was muted. I had no control. Hi, I'm Ms. Sherman. I read your paper as well, Faith.
Oh, do you guys know what the password is? I don't know. I thought I only got a link, and some people are asking for passwords.
If there's a password, it's Arte with a capital A.
Mom, it's Arte with a capital A.
It's actually Swift I1.
Oh, is it?
According to, this is my cat.
Mistakes were made. How do I edit that?
I don't know.
Oh,
right.
Wait, what is it?
I'm going to fix it in a second. Give me a second. If she has the link, she can just press on that.
Yeah. Mom, you have the link. I'm literally
The joys of
screaming
Zoom
across the house.
defense, ladies and gentlemen.
I apologize.
Mom, are you in? Okay. My family is not in. Mom, the link should let them in as long as they click the link.
Well, Faith, whenever you're ready, you're welcome to get going with your introductory speech.
Okay. Okay, I'm just going to start. So I just want to say, first off, I want to thank everyone, all my family and friends who came to support me as I defend my thesis. I also want to thank my panel members who have taken the time to read my paper and explore this topic along with me. It's crazy to me that I'm already here defending my thesis. It's been a long but immensely rewarding experience. I've always looked forward to today because I knew when it came, it meant that I successfully made it through RSA, and that this chapter of my life would be coming to a close. I always thought that at this point I would be an incredibly wise person. And now, although I've learned so much, I know I also have a long way to go. I counted down the days, but now that it's here, I'm sorry to see it pass. Throughout my time at Arate, I've had the privilege of living in two worlds. One is a world of people, less eccentric than the books, but supremely real and full of love. It's a world of teachers who have mentored me and inspired me. It's populated by my family who have supported me and my friends who have challenged me. The other is a world of books. I've been dragged by Socrates from the cave of shadows and puppets into a world of light. I've met his guardians and discussed alongside Thrasymachus. He's frustrated me with his endless questions, but he's taught me unparalleled truth. I've stumbled and cried alongside Frankel, trying to keep up and trying to have a fraction of his strength and courage as he survived the concentration camp. I've heard him practice jokes just to see a smile on his comrade's face and felt the injustice as he was abused by the SS guards. I've learned the power of the phrase, man can become accustomed to anything. I've left behind my preconceived beliefs and morals to walk down dark alleys with the underground man. He's shown me the strength of his mind, the cowardice in his soul, and the methods behind his madness. I've watched him be an insect trampled by men and seen the pleasure in his eyes as he manipulates Liza. I've seen his demons, but felt his frightening attraction to the underground. Although the two worlds I lived in are vastly different, in both I've seen things that startle me and felt things I've never felt. I've met people with different points of view, and I've thought about ideas I've never thought before. Both have made me proud and shaped me into who I am. Philosophy has become a big part of my career at Arate, and I always had my doubts about the goodness of the philosophers who wrote the books we hold to such high esteem. So I chose to explore what a good philosopher is. In Plato's Republic, Socrates speaks about the unmatched wisdom of philosophers. He explains that a philosopher loves every part of learning, and what he learns is untainted. It does not change with time or lose its value, because what he seeks is truth. His pursuit of knowledge isn't a means to an end. The philosopher seeks knowledge because learning is the means and learning is the end. Socrates continues to describe the nature of the philosopher as someone who is a rememberer, a good learner, magnificent, charming, and a friend and kinsman of truth, justice, courage, and moderation. He tells of their unwavering ability to seek truth in a world of distractions and pleasures. So I began to wonder about the responsibilities of such rare and enlightened men. What does the philosopher owe to society? How can he maintain a balance between seeking truth, guiding others, and pursuing his own happiness? I noticed that men can have philosophic natures, but not necessarily be good. In order to understand the good philosopher, I knew I also had to examine the unjust and vicious philosopher. This is where Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground comes into play. The underground man, who I'll also refer to as the narrator, is a man fueled by curiosity and the desire to endlessly pursue knowledge. He seeks it in the strangest of places and dares to introduce ideas that others fear to acknowledge about themselves and the world they live in. He is a philosopher, but his idiosyncratic nature leads him to follow dark and twisted theories to his own detriment as well as the detriment of others. Because the underground man seeks to pursue the pleasures of the world in tandem with knowledge, his ideas stem from an unjust foundation. He uses his intelligence to manipulate and hurt those around him. He is the unjust and vicious philosopher. The unjust philosopher is an unhappy man. and his unhappiness is a direct result of an illness within his soul, which originates from his addiction to the world of multiplicity and desires. His pursuit of knowledge is selfish. On the other hand, Frankl, in Man's Search for Meaning, sharply contrasts the unjust philosopher. Frankl is a man who has been fated to endure a seemingly endless amount of suffering inside a concentration camp. Despite the unimaginable circumstances, Frankl maintains a level head and acts in a way that is beneficial to the harmony of his soul as well as those around him. Both men are calculating, but Frankl only seeks to control what is within his reach, while the underground man seeks to control others and his external circumstances. Frankl uses his knowledge to guide others and maintain a positive attitude. He understands the importance of shifting his focus from the multiplicity of desires and pleasures that the narrator is obsessed with to the unity of the good. In this case, Frankl's unity is one that encompasses love and compassion for his comrades in a way that fosters positivity in himself and those around him. Although it seems like Frankl's life is no longer his own, he is still able to maintain his humanity and willingness to help others because of his focus on what is permanent and beneficial to his soul and mental health. He is the just philosopher. His pursuit of knowledge and self-exploration is selfless. Through examining these two characters, I learned that in order to be a good philosopher, one must learn how to strike a balance between seeking truth, guiding others, and pursuing happiness, along with establishing a wholehearted will, maintaining an internal harmony, and gracefully educating the multitude. The good philosopher is someone who does not mind his own business. When men have been gifted the ability to see beyond the shadows and pursue the truth, wouldn't it be a shame for them to keep the beauty of the light to themselves? What is the point in being enlightened when those you love cannot experience that beauty with you? Thus, living one's life in service of pursuing truth and educating others, in tandem with harmonizing one's soul, is how men must live in order to become good philosophers and find meaning in their lives. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Faith. So to start us off, I had a question for you. So your paper explores what it means to be the good philosopher. And you show that the good philosopher guides others out of the cave, toward the light, if you will. But you also mentioned how there are unjust or vicious philosophers who control and manipulate others. So I was curious what your thoughts are between the difference of controlling and guiding.
I think when someone is like the underground man, when he's controlling someone, it's for his own personal gain and he's trying to achieve something within himself that is not going to be beneficial to his soul in the long run. And it might give him pleasure in the moment, no matter how nasty that pleasure may be. Because he thinks it's pleasurable, he outweighs the cost and thinks it's more beneficial to his soul. But when somebody's guiding someone, it's selfless because there's no like instant benefit that you're going to get from guiding someone, except there's like satisfaction within yourself. And I think guiding people and helping them with the knowledge and wisdom you've gained through your life is how you're going to be happy, and that's the only way you'll find meaning.
So control is for the benefit of the controller, whereas guidance is for the benefit of the guided?
Yeah, and there are benefits for whoever's guiding because obviously you get fulfillment and satisfaction and happiness, but that's more of a long-term goal. And I think you only achieve happiness and meaning if you're doing it for the act. Because I think guiding should be an active condition and it's not something you do for the end. It's the means, it's the journey that's going to pay off, and that's the only way you're going to get the result.
Can you control somebody for their own benefit?
That's really interesting because I know whenever I was like writing my paper, I was thinking about guiding others and how some people just don't want to be guided. And it's, you have to like find a way to guide them gracefully, or I don't know if sometimes people just have to learn the hard way and hit rock bottom so they can start looking up, because there's only so much you can do to turn their face like towards the light. Because I know like in Socrates and Plato's Republic, he talks about how he drags people from the cave. They don't come willingly. So it's obviously, it's a hard process. And I think pain and suffering is going to be a part of the process because it's hard to break those habits. So I think sometimes it's hard for me to say if it's okay to control people, because the philosopher has to have good intentions, and you have to have the knowledge to actually be benefiting someone, because I can think I'm helping you, but I might be hurting you.
Yeah, I'm especially curious about that, the moment of bringing someone out of a cave. The dragging there seems a lot like control in Platonic dialogue. Do you think that level of force is necessary?
I think some people may be more willing to leave the cave, but it's asking you to leave an environment you've grown up in and it's kind of your culture and everything you've known. So it's scary to be leaving everything you've known behind. So sometimes people do have to be dragged. I don't know. It takes a lot of trust to want to leave your cave, like willingly. I think you have to trust the philosopher, which is hard for a lot of people.
Hey, I have a question. It's kind of in that same thing, because you're talking about how you can't necessarily lead somebody, but you should try and find a way. Sounds a little bit like manipulation, just a little. So I'm not sure how that's not different than the underground man. That's actually not my question though, because on my page 27, which might be your page 24, you have a quote that says, "He must seek to control only what is within his reach. Only then will he find meaning in his suffering." If I take out that suffering part, if you only seek to control which is within your reach, then why is it all right for me to drag somebody or guide somebody, or however you want to call it, to something they may not really be interested in?
Mm-hmm. So when you're seeking to control something within your reach, in that situation, so Frankl is someone who's in a concentration camp, and there's a lot of people who are dying around him because they're focusing on things that they can't control. Like there's a man who had a dream that on March 23rd, he was going to be freed from the concentration camp. And when that day came around, he died because he wasn't freed and he had put everything of himself into this day. So it's like when you put yourself into temporary things, then it's going to hurt you. Like when your purpose is based off of external things. So when I say seek what you can control, Frankl found purpose in love and compassion and helping others. And that was his internal goal. And it was a permanent goal that was more purposeful. So it was beneficial to his soul. And it was not something that was worldly or temporary. And then, so you talk about how, so seeking to control what's only within your reach. And I would say seeking to control what's, I think if Frankl had the knowledge and he had the wisdom and he had good intentions, so I think him trying to guide others in the concentration camp was within his reach. It wasn't something that he had no business doing. And it's hard to judge who has the right to guide others and drag them from the cave. That's something that's really difficult. And I think everybody does have good intent. Well, I think everybody thinks they're pursuing the good, no matter if the good is actually the good. It could be their perceived good. But I see Frankl having good intentions and him setting his like sights and his goals on something more than just benefiting himself. So that's why I think he has the right to drag people from the cave.
May I have a follow-up question? So you said he uses his knowledge to help other people. That idea of knowledge, I'm not saying knowledge is relevant, but I will point out that the Flat Earth Society is gaining members, right? And they think they have knowledge and they're going to share that knowledge with others. So how can I be sure that my knowledge is actual knowledge and that I'm leading people towards the good?
That's such a hard question because I don't know how you know what you know is right. And it's also, I'm bringing in like Montaigne and the cannibals,
sure.
And they've been raised thinking that cannibalism is okay because it's just been a part of their society and they've grown up this way. And of course that makes sense. I don't know how I would be if I grew up in that society because I've been raised believing this is okay. Or even like across the world, different cultures have different things that they follow. But I think at some point the law of reason has to come into play. And I don't think you can use, I don't know if this is answering your question, but I don't think you can always just use like what you believe and what you've been taught. I think there is like a greater power and like a law of reason and good that is in us. And I think we have a sense of good and evil in some ways, but I don't know, science, the Flat Earth Society, that's like a hard question because I don't know, like science is, like I've never been out in space and seen the world, like I haven't seen the Earth as a giant sphere, but I'm trusting science and knowledge that we've, like in cameras and whatever that we've seen. So I guess I'm not completely sure if the world is like flat or not because I've never seen it, but I'm trusting that people had good intentions and are showing me the truth about science.
I wasn't trying to ask you a difficult question. And then after you said it was difficult, I went, it is. It's just, I want to make sure in my own life, if I go about it, that if I'm sharing what I think of as wisdom, that I'm doing it, that I'm actually giving wisdom. And how do I know? But
well, I think if
you're
you have
right, difficult question.
If you have good intentions, I don't think everything's always going to work out as planned. Like honesty obviously doesn't pay off. Like doesn't result in always like good results.
Did you just say honesty doesn't pay off?
No, honesty does pay off. Honesty does pay off, but it doesn't always have the results that we intend them to, because people can like receive your honesty in a bad way. So you have to be honest with love. But I think it's hard lessons that people have to learn. And if I have good intentions and I'm trying to help someone and be honest with them, then I think that's both of us trying to seek truth. And we're looking in the right direction.
I also, you mentioned in your paper being willing to question your own ideas, which I thought is applicable here. Being willing to listen to differing opinions and always searching for truth and iron sharpening iron. So I think that is important here as well, is being willing to update your idea of truth, I suppose. And that kind of idea. You mentioned that both Socrates and Frankl believe that only a few people are capable of a philosophical nature or have a philosophical nature or are capable of high moral standards. Is this something you agree with?
I have a hard time saying that some people are like chosen and special, because I think if you set your mind to something, you can like do anything. Like that's what I've seen throughout my life, because as long as I focus and actually want what I like am trying to aim at, then I've achieved it. And I think obviously people have different strengths and weaknesses and dispositions, but I have a hard time believing that only some people can be philosophers if they want to. I think it might be easier or harder.
So how do you know you don't have a philosophical nature or are capable of high moral standards, and that's why it is that way for you?
I don't think what I achieve comes naturally. I put a lot of work into what I do. Like my brother, it comes a lot easier to him, the grades and everything, but I think he has a strength that I lack, and we just have different strengths. but I just don't see, I don't think I'm a like natural philosopher because that part doesn't come naturally.
Okay.
You
So
talk a lot about. Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
So you talk a lot throughout your paper about kind of the harmonization, this Platonic idea of harmonization. I'm just curious, kind of building on this idea, what does that have to do with being a philosopher? What is this something everyone is capable of? Is this, yeah, how does that part of your paper change based on this conversation?
Like harmonizing the three parts of the soul.
Yeah, right. I got the impression, please correct me if I'm wrong, right, that that's the sort of thing that would lead you to be a philosophic person, right? The true philosopher, the activity he's about with himself is balancing his soul. Is that right? Is that wrong?
Yeah, so Socrates talks about the three parts of the soul. There's the calculating, the desiring, and then the spirited. So the calculating love, here I have it, but basically there's three parts, and the spirited is victory loving, the calculating is learning loving or wisdom loving, and then the desiring is what it sounds, it's gain loving. And Socrates argues that these three parts of the soul have to be in balance, and one part can't like rule over the other two, because then your soul's in disharmony and there's an illness within your soul. So he says the job of the good philosopher is someone who maintains the balance and works to maintain balance within his own house before he seeks to help others, because any action that causes disharmony is an unjust action, and anything that furthers harmony is just. And I had a problem with this too, because he uses the phrase mind your own business to maintain harmony within your soul. Mind your own business and do that first. And I agree that people should work to maintain a harmony within their soul, because if you don't have a harmony, how do you know that you're guiding others in a good way? But I think that when you're so focused on maintaining your own harmony, it takes away from, if you're living your entire life just trying to like benefit yourself, then there's no point. Like with the true pilot example, how he's like in the crow's nest and he's seeking like knowledge about the stars, and he has knowledge and he's seeking truth. But on the ship below him, there's people who are steering the ship in the wrong direction because they're trying to take over the helm with trickery and deceit. So I just don't see any benefits if you're only minding your own business, because you might be seeking truth, but ultimately the whole ship is going in the wrong direction. The city is going to be diseased. You might have truth, but what's the point if you have it and you're not sharing it with anybody else? I don't think you should mind your own business. I think obviously if you maintain harmony, it's a good thing, and you'll be more beneficial to the people you're helping, and it's easier for you to know that what you're doing is good. But I think at sometimes you have to sacrifice your own virtues and harmony for other people.
Do you think that you brought up the idea that Plato thinks that a just action is acting with a harmonious soul? Do you also think that?
Like a just action is something that furthers the harmony in your soul, or something that.
Yeah, I was something like that. So like we could tell a just action by whether or not it put a soul in harmony or in disharmony. Do you think that's a good way of measuring justice?
I would say yes last year, but we read Machiavelli's The Prince, and after we read that, it just, I don't know, maybe I was thinking, well, if a prince has to sacrifice his own virtue because he talks about how sometimes you have to be cruel to some to benefit the like multitude. And I was thinking if that's true, then there's two options. Like either the prince isn't meant to, we're not supposed to have principalities if that's what's necessary to rule, or sometimes you have to sacrifice your personal virtue for the virtue of the city. So I don't know. I think you'll be better off if you have a harmonized soul and you're trying to help others. But also, how do you know if your soul's in harmony? it's just like so many abstract things.
Yeah, I guess I'm really curious about, right, we were talking about control earlier, right, and that Frankel thinks uh, we should focus on the things we can control. Thinking about a prince ruling a city, what should I consider under my control, right? Should I consider the entire city under my control? Should I consider just me under my control? Maybe like a smaller group in between? What should I consider under my control?
I think that the responsibilities of a prince are obviously so different from anybody within the city, but I think when he's charged or when he's put himself in the position to rule a city, he's responsible for everybody's safety and well-being. And that's a huge responsibility, and it's hard to like obviously protect everybody, but I think you have to act in a way that's beneficial to the common good. And it's a hard thing to say, but I think sometimes you have to sacrifice a small amount of people for the benefit of the good, because or like you have to sacrifice yourself for the benefit of the multitude. So I think he is responsible for everybody that he's ruling over because they're trusting him.
Is that just the rule of princes, or should Frankel? I guess I'm really struggling with kind of Frankel in the concentration camps, right? Like, what can he control? Is it just the role of princes whose control extends beyond themselves, or should the philosopher also consider their neighbors kind of in their sphere of control?
Well, I think if we go with what Socrates says, and he says that philosophers are rare and few and far between, and he's basically saying that they should rule the cities, and they're the smartest in the cities because they have justice and they have knowledge by their side. And if we go by what he says, and they're very rare, then I think that they do have responsibility over the people, and I think they should seek to help people outside of themselves. And I think Frankel did do that, and he did it to the best of his ability with the circumstances he was in. And I think as long as your actions are well intended and you do the best you can to help the people you're with, because he was obviously suffering himself, and he was still able to help other people. So I think he did the best he could with what he had. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, maybe just to go back to Mr. Loving's question, right? Like we kind of broached this idea of maybe more people being of a philosophic nature than Plato thinks, right? How should I know who's in my sphere of control, right? Should I consider that I, as a philosopher, right? Maybe I am a philosophic soul, maybe I'm not. Should I consider other people around me under my control? To what extent should I?
I think other people around you in your control. I think that people can be philosophers, like little philosophers in their own way. Like I think you can be a philosopher in an action you do, because I would consider my mom a philosopher towards me, and she may not be a philosopher to everybody else, but she's taught me and she's guided me in a way. So I feel like everybody in a way can be a philosopher, and you can, I don't like the word control because it sounds so manipulative, because,
Yeah.
but I feel like but I think it makes sense because we want to control everything. Like it's hard for people to let go of control. So I think maybe guiding is a better word, but I think we should try to guide or help the people who are around us. Like you're a teacher, so I think obviously you should guide your students in a way that you think is good and you have good intentions. I think if you're seeing someone who's hurting and you look the other way and you have like the knowledge to help them and you're doing well in your own life and you like feel secure, I just feel like it's wrong to turn the other way just because that might take away from you doing your own works to benefit yourself.
Faith, I have a not so hypothetical for you. say I am someone who might not always be harmonized as far as in a Socratic kind of way, but somebody who has a lot of influence over large groups of people, I don't know, like a teacher or something. And in what capacity am I able to lead someone or guide somebody to light if I myself am striving for it as well? Am I able to do that effectively, or is it folly?
That's why, yeah. So when we're harmonizing just three parts of the soul, that's why it's just such an abstract concept, and I don't actually know if we have three parts of the soul. Like, how am I supposed to tell? But I think we're all sinners and we're all struggling. So you're not going to be perfect, and your soul's not going to be perfectly harmonized. It's another active condition. It's you constantly throughout your life working to maintain harmony or work towards harmony. You're trying to hit the target, and you're always trying to hit that mean. But I don't think you'll ever reach it. I think it's always something you're working towards. So I think you do, just because your soul is not perfectly harmonized, I think you do have the right to help people around you because you've lived a life and you've experienced things and you've gained wisdom and you have knowledge, and you should be imparting it on the students that are going to be looking up to you. And it's okay that you sometimes make mistakes.
So what if I don't want to be harmonized? I mean, what's the, I don't understand. So what? I'm not harmonized.
Are you the underground man?
What's so wrong with the underground man? He seems like he's okay.
Yeah.
He has pleasure, however twisted it is, but
yeah.
What's the big deal?
And he strives for knowledge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's I love this book so much. I wish everybody read it. It's it's such a dark book, but
horrible.
I've learned so much from it, and it's so interesting to think about. And I think it's so interesting because he's not crazy. You can't just call him crazy and dismiss all his beliefs, but because he's got a logic and he's calculating and he's intelligent. But I think at the end of the day,
great.
Yeah, exactly. But at the end of the day, there's that part at the end of the book where he goes to Liza and he's crying and he's struggling with himself because he knows he's unhappy. He calls himself an unhappy man. He admits it. But then there's another switch that goes off and he's well, happiness isn't worth it to him. He thinks that I think of him, I don't know, I see parts of myself because in college, I'm pursuing something that's difficult. And I think the suffering that's going to happen in college is going to pay off with the career that I want to pursue.
Uh-oh. He's going underground for college.
So it's I see parts of myself and I understand some of where he's coming from, but I also think that what I want to pursue is going to make me happy, and I'm hoping it will. But it seems like he's sacrificing everything, and he believes the suffering that he's going through now is going to pay off in the end. And he thinks happiness isn't, because I feel like everybody thinks happiness is something that we're aiming towards. Everybody wants to be happy, but I guess he doesn't buy into that and believe that happiness is worth it. He thinks the underground and the knowledge that he has is the best thing for him.
So is that wrong? I mean, should he try to be redeemed and come out of the underground, or should he just stay there?
I think he should come out of the underground because I feel like knowledge is temporary also, because I've memorized dates and I've memorized all these things and I don't remember everything from 9th grade U.S. history, but I think the process and what I've learned through it is what I take with me throughout my life. So it's everything that he's seeking right now is temporary. Knowledge is temporary, I would say.
Is knowledge the same thing as memorization?
Well, that depends if you want to say knowledge versus wisdom. I was thinking wisdom is what I take away from the knowledge that like I'm working towards in school, I get wisdom from that. So I think the knowledge what he's pursuing is knowledge. I don't think it's wisdom.
So Faith, you mentioned that you believe that the things you are pursuing in college will bring you happiness, right? Oh,
I hope so.
hesitant now?
That's what I'm hoping for. I don't think that's everything that's going to make me happy, but I think that's a part of my life that I will be happy with.
If it turns out that that's not the case, what will you do?
Oh, well, it's funny you should ask. No, well, so the senior quote that I chose is by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and it talks about, here, I'm going to read it because this is, so I have it, like I have a sticker on my computer. So it says, for what it's worth, it's never too late, or in my case, too early to be whoever you want to be. There's no time limit. Start whenever you want. You can change or stay the same. There are no rules to this thing. We can make the best or the worst of it. I hope you make the best of it. I hope you see things that startle you. I hope you feel things you've never felt before. I hope you meet people who have a different point of view. I hope you live a life you're proud of. And if you're not, I hope you have the courage to start over again. So I'm aiming towards what I think is going to be good for me. And if it doesn't make, I don't think my career is what's going to make me happy, but I think it's going to be something that I can be proud of. And if I'm not, then hopefully I do have the courage to start over again.
I'm sure you will.
I guess I'm still a little curious about, right, I don't know, you paint this beautiful image, and I really think that the image of the sailor steering the boat toward the stars, right, is one that's really along with what you're saying, right? This idea that even if we point the boat in the wrong direction, we can always, move the tiller, turn it around. I'm curious between that sort of situation in which I see a lot of control on your part, right? You've got your hand on the tiller, right? And you can just move it wherever you'd like. And the situation that Frankel seems to be looking at with, right? Which seems one characterized by an absolute loss of control, right? I'm not sure if he has his hand on a tiller on a boat I don't know. In what do you see a tension there between finding meaning like Frankel and searching for the truth or happiness or something like the steerer of a boat?
Well, I think when all your freedoms are taken away, like Frankel's were, and he was in the concentration camp, he couldn't control what was happening to him. He couldn't control his fate or things like that. But he talks about how the one thing you can control when all your other freedoms are taken away is your spiritual freedom. And he says, the only thing that I had left was my attitude. That was the only thing I could control. And I think we obviously take that for granted. Like, you can change your attitude. And obviously, I don't think it made his experience happy and whatever, but he knew that that was the only thing that he could control, and he had to acknowledge that. And I think that's what helped him survive. And I compare him to the underground man because I think the underground man does try to control external things because he focuses on, like, I use the word multiplicity from Augustine's Confessions, and I use that to describe like the temporal desires of the world. And he was focused on things that are temporary. And the difference with Frankel was he used the love and he used compassion to guide him. And it was crazy because halfway through the book, we didn't even know he had a wife. And then he talks about how he was married and he doesn't know if she's alive or dead, but the fact that they had the concept of love, they had loved each other, was what was guiding him. He didn't need to know if she was alive or dead. Like, it's just like love, like that thing is what helped him. And it's so hard for me to like grasp, but it's because how can you not like worry about if she's alive or dead? It's like the love outside of that. So it's like, because he was looking at something permanent that doesn't fade or die, it helped him. I don't know. I forgot the question.
It's okay. I have two. Is Frankel happy in the camps?
I don't think he's happy. I think there's this part where there's this thing. It's in Plato's Republic, and they talk about it a little bit in Frankl, and I forgot the word, but there's suffering. There's the middle, which is what's the word? It's like you're at rest, but I don't know what the word is. It's like repose. I think that's the word, repose, and then you're happy. So it's like, so he talks about how people go from happiness to repose. I think that's the right word, and we see that as suffering because we're going down, and then people go from repose to suffering, and then they're like, well, this is actual suffering. So I think when you go from suffering to like repose or being at rest, that's seen as a good thing, and you can mistake that for being happy or like pleasurable. I don't know how that related, but that was what I thought of when I was thinking of like his mental state, because I don't think he was happy, but I think he reconciled himself to the situation, because that's the only way you can move forward. Because there were people, like I'm thinking of myself, and I feel like I would just be crying in the corner, like I wouldn't be able to get up. And the fact that he had like acknowledged that this was the reality of the situation allowed him to move forward. And I don't think he was happy, but I think he accepted it.
I guess I wonder then what we think about, right? Because you frame him as the true philosopher, right? And here in this moment, right? I wonder if he's seeking happiness or if he's seeking something else. And more generally, right, when we're thinking about the stars that we're looking at, right? Is happiness the star we should be steering our boat toward? With Frankl as an example, or maybe it is, and just like not at that time.
I think that it seems like if I'm pursuing happiness, in a way it seems kind of selfish. I think that happiness should be a secondary goal, or like a result of what we should be directly seeking. I think we should be directly seeking to help the people around us and guide them. And I think through living a life serving others, happiness and meaning will come from that. And I think we can all, I don't believe Socrates in saying that philosophers are like few and far between. I think all of you have been philosophers to me in some ways. And it's just, I think everybody can be philosophers to everybody in different ways.
Well, on that note, I'd like to open it up to questions from the grander group. If you have something you'd like to ask Faith, you will find a clap and a hand raising thing, Zoomity-doo-dah, which Mr. Gordon will notice, ideally speaking, and then unmute you, potentially turn on your
Faith.
video.
Faith, if you could call on people and have them turn on their video so I can unmute them, that would be lovely.
Lauren Janda.
Okay. Do I have to turn on my camera too, or is this just?
You don't need to. You can if you'd like.
Okay. Well, no, I'm not going to. So I guess I don't know the best way to phrase it, so sorry if this is confusing, but how can you be a philosopher and also be so misled as far as pursuing truth goes? So I guess I haven't read most of your books, so I don't know if that pertains, but would we all be philosophers and it just be a matter of whether we're just or unjust philosophers, or is there something else that's like specific that makes you a philosopher?
I think the reason that I consider the Underground Man a philosopher is because everything he was doing, he was seeking truth. And I don't know if it was, I wouldn't say it's truth. I would say he was seeking knowledge and intelligence. And I think not everybody is able to constantly be seeking knowledge because we get distracted and there's other things that come around. So I think someone who, if you have your eye on knowledge and truth, then you're a philosopher. If that's something that like consumes you and is something you're always like curious about and something that you just have a desire to pursue, then you can be a philosopher. But I think the difference is how you apply the wisdom and knowledge that you gain through being a philosopher, and that can determine whether you're just or unjust. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
I think it's Miss Jacobson with the other hand.
Hello.
Hi.
Good job.
Thank you.
I'm negotiating snack time with my kids, but I did have a question. But if you hear screams, that's why. You talked a lot about control and seeking for truth, and Mr. Gordon brought that up a little bit as well. I wondered about like the idea. I'm really screaming over here. I wondered about actually letting go of control and what impact that has on your search for truth, especially in Frankel's case, because he did let go of so much that was essentially out of his control, whereas the underground man, I think, is maybe more obsessed with control. I wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
So how does letting go like benefit you?
Or at least affect your journey toward seeking knowledge or truth.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily a benefit.
I would think this reminds me of people who are like perfectionists, and I wouldn't say I'm perfectionist, but I think with my grades, I really like having straight A's, and if I don't get an A, I have a really hard time with it. And I think that's something I need to let go of. And obviously Arete is like knowledge before grades and learning before grades. And I have a hard time with that because I feel like if I didn't get an A, I wouldn't be able to like handle it. And that's something that I need to let go of so I can focus on the knowledge and the learning.
I totally did not expect that answer from you, Faith.
I feel bad because I've been at RSA for how long and I should have learned this by now.
No, I think that's great. I mean, that wasn't even what I was thinking of when I asked the question. I was really thinking of Frankel and just how, I mean, he had to let go of like even the knowledge of his wife being alive, right? As you mentioned. And so, but in the end, that almost led him to a greater sense of like redemption or recognition of things that are beyond the temporal. I don't know. Yeah, those are my thoughts. I'm gonna, my kids are killing each other behind me.
I don't see any other raised hands. Did you hear that in the back? I don't
Alex.
think there's any
What
other
about Alex?
Oh, is he raising his hand? Oh, I see Risa's hand.
I don't know what was happening with the muting thing, but okay. So this is kind of just like, it's kind of a hard question, but I was curious. So you were talking about like getting out of the cave and like how you have to trust someone, a philosopher preferably, to like guide you out of that. So if you've lived in this cave your whole life and you don't really know right from wrong or anything like that, how can you trust that the philosopher that's leading you out is good rather than bad? It's kind of like a tricky question and I can't even answer it, so like, but
well, yeah, I think that's really important because you can't just blindly trust whoever is like claiming to guide you, because I feel like that would be like a cult. You have to like have knowledge, and I think it takes a certain amount of faith, but also I think you should try things and learn from them and see how it like sits with you, and how I feel like whatever you're doing, there's reason that comes into play, and if it's unreasonable, then you should move away from it.
yeah. Kind of like
hard
learning your
question,
mistakes almost. I know. I was like, I feel bad, but
No, it was like I liked it because that's something I was thinking about, because I'm saying like philosophers, like they know everything, but how do we know like that what they know is good and what their intentions are.
Right.
But I want like because we're reading the Brothers K right now, and like holy fools are like a huge theme, and they're people who it's like I don't know if I have time, but like it's like a whole thing where they have like faith in everybody, that everybody has good intentions. Like there's this woman that gives away everything she has, and she walks around like half naked without any clothes because she like gives away any clothes that people give to her because she wants to help everybody, and people see them as idiots and because they're hurting themselves, but they believe like helping others is more important. And I struggle with this because I'm always like, well, why should I put myself out there and be vulnerable when people are going to like disappoint me or mistreat me? But I think you should try and put yourself out there, and it's not our battle to fight if people are going to disappoint you. I think things will happen and they'll learn. I don't think we should try to like fight those battles in a way. Like I don't think we should try to hurt others because they're hurting us.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Good job.
And I misled you all earlier. Raising your hand is not a function of the reactions tab, but if you go to participants, I believe you can choose to raise your hand.
Alex is raising his hand.
Yes, I am. So I was wondering, you just said before that philosophers seem to not know, or like you said that they know everything, right? But Socrates claimed that he didn't really know everything and he knew nothing, right? So is that a thing which a philosopher would do, or do you consider Socrates a philosopher? If like someone should like, also I wanted to go into more questions about like teaching and stuff, but like I'll stick to just that one. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that if you go into things thinking you have all the knowledge and wisdom, then you're going to come off prideful and you most likely are misguided. But I think what Socrates was aiming for in saying, I know nothing, in reality, he obviously does have knowledge and wisdom he's gained, but by going in the situation with humility and knowledge that you're no better than anybody else, then that's how people are going to I think that's why people are so open to receiving him, even though there are people who have argued with him and didn't want to like believe what he was saying. And I think that also goes with like judging others. I keep on bringing the Brothers K, but there's judgment. And I think the only way you have the right to judge somebody else is if you know that you wouldn't act differently in their situation. I think that's the only way you can like judge comes off as such a bad word, like because people think of it negatively. But I mean like examine a situation, because that's what I mean when I mean judge, because I think that's the only way. If you know you're on a level playing field and you don't see yourself as above or anything else, you know you would act in the same way as the other person, then I kind of got off on a tangent, but that's what I think.
Okay, solid. Yeah, I like it. Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Oh, Mr. M.
Uh-oh.
So philosophy is the love of wisdom. I'm kind of curious as to whether you can have wisdom without love.
I think you can have knowledge without love, but I don't think you can be wise without love, or that's a hard. I don't like you can have knowledge without love, but I don't think you can be wise without love. If you're wise, I feel like wisdom without love is knowledge. That's what I would see, because if you have knowledge and you're just keeping it to yourself because you don't love anybody else. But I feel like when you're wise, you know you love others also, and you want to share your knowledge, which makes you wise. Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah. So, that's good. Thanks, man.
Typically, we like to save the last question of the defense for a member of the defender's family. So if there's any Yakanas out there who would like to ask Faith a question, now is your time.
Like crickets. Okay. Oh, my dad said he posted where did you post a question? Oh, wait, hold on. Oh wait, I don't see your question, but also Matthew I think that's my cousin raising his hand.
Would you like to answer his question?
If he's nice.
Okay. Well, Matthew, you have to be nice, apparently.
Seth was over here, and he was going to ask a question about confidence versus um, like arrogance. How you were saying that people come off like judgy and things like that, and he left because he didn't want to be on cam. But yeah, he was going to ask what the difference is between, or how you can tell if someone's being really confident or if they're going to come off arrogant. And, like,
yeah. So, oh, sorry. What?
And like, where do you draw the line? Like, if for yourself, right? Because you like to strive to do that, and then so how do you keep from, I don't know, coming off like what you were saying?
Mm-hmm. I think it's really hard because some people are gonna, even if you're trying to be graceful with how you're like telling people things, or trying to be kind with honesty, people don't always receive it well. So I think you do the best you can, and you have good intentions, and you try to have humility, but people are going to receive it however way they want to, and you can't control that. That's something out of your control. So as long as you do it as gracefully as you can, then
you have good intentions, basically.
Yeah, and I don't think good intentions don't always work the way you want them to, so it's hard, but as long as you're trying to help people gracefully.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't know. Seth, he left. I'm not gonna lie. He didn't want to be on cam, but he was here.
And it looks like there's another question in the chat there for you.
My dad said, from a biblical book of Job, did God have good intentions with Job? Oh my. This is why I didn't write about the Bible. I have to say he did have good intentions, and I don't think I know what his intentions were, but I have to believe he has good intentions. This got brought up in the Brothers K2, like the book of Job, and I have a hard time understanding why God allowed Satan to like do like horrible things and like kill his family. I think it was a test for him, but it's hard for me to understand. I'm trying to understand why suffering is something that we have to go through, or like I know we find meaning from suffering, but it's hard for me to understand why. And I don't think it's for me to understand why God does what he does, but I have to believe he has good intentions and that there's a greater plan, because if I don't like believe that things happen for a reason, I feel like I wouldn't like have a reason to be doing what I'm doing every day. And like, if everything's just whoop-de-doo, then what's the point, I guess?
Well, you heard it here first, folks.
Okay.
Everything's whoop-de-doo.
Dad, oh my. Okay, what is the difference between happiness and joy? It just depends on it can mean whatever I feel like that's a hard question, because you can think joy means one thing and I might think it means something else. But when I say the word happiness, I think joy is included with happiness. It's like the end goal that everybody wants to reach. It's like all good things, and I don't know. I don't think I think joy should be included in happiness.
All right. So wonderful job, Faith. You deserve all more applause than you are able to hear currently. The panel's going to leave in a moment, at which point we'll make you the host, and you can unmute everybody and they can tell you how amazing you are, and we're going to go talk about you behind your back.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right, Faith, you should have been made the host. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. There's a couple buttons. So there's one to unmute everyone. There's also a setting. If you go bottom right, you can see to allow people to unmute themselves and talk freely.
Bottom right or bottom left?
Should be bottom right. There should be a menu on the bottom right.
Not on the bottom right. It says end meeting.
I will change the setting for you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Allow participants to unmute themselves. Perfect. All right. I'm gonna make you the host again. Great job, Faith.
Thank you.
Hold on, Faith.
Good job, Faith.
Thank you.
Congrats.
So proud of you.
Thank you.
Good job. Good job. Good job.
Yes, good job, Faith.
Good luck, Faith. This is
Thank
inviting me,
you.
guys.
Good job.
Thank you for coming.
Please.
Hi, Faith.
Yeah, we're fine.
Happy birthday, Andrew.
Thank you.
Happy Earth Day.
Yes, happy Earth Day.
Bye.
Hi, Mr. M.
Thank you for coming.
So proud of you. Nana loves you. I love you.
Thank you. I love you too.
Love you, Belle.
Love you.
She did awesome. Good job, honey. So proud of you.
Tk you.
So beautiful. Congratulations.
So does this mean you
Hi, Amanda and Julie. Hi, guys. Thank you for all being on here for us, for her. I know. Really appreciate it. So nice. Thank you. Hey, Matthew. Is that Matthew? Yep, Matthew is with Grace. Oh.